Welcome to a new video on the Photography Minimalist. Hans de Graaf and I recently decided to make a new video series, and I'm going to be calling it The Switch. Let me tell you what that entails. Hans will provide a camera body and lens combination, and we will each choose a couple of rolls of film. Then we each individually go out and shoot through these rolls of film. After which we'll give you our opinion on using the camera, maybe we'll tell you a little bit about the cameras, and we'll show you the results that we were able to achieve. We think that might be interesting because then within one video you get two opinions and two sets of results on one camera and lens combination. Surprisingly enough, Hans provided me with a Canon RT and a Canon EOS 600, and he included a Samyang 85mm 1.4 aspherical manual focus lens. And this was for me a surprise, because when I think about film photography and vintage cameras, I think about the likes of a Canon AE1 or a Pentax K1000, for example. These Canon cameras that Hans provided are later version SLRs, primarily made of plastic and built in 1989. Before we have a closer look at the cameras, I want to tell you that I chose for the TMax 3200, which is still in the EOS 600. I'm about 2/3 through that roll of film, and I chose for a Kodak TMax 100, and that I already shot through the Canon RT. These two cameras are quite identical with regards to their specifications. The only difference is the fact that this has a fixed translucent mirror, RT standing for real time. And I call it translucent and not transparent because you do lose about 2/3 of a stop. They both have a manual and a program mode, and also aperture or shutter priority. And what I found to be very interesting is the fact that these cameras are very easy to learn. There's no steep learning curve, which I had expected. So they are very easy to use. And actually, even though they're built of plastic, they have a very good build quality. They feel solid. And for me, the grip, the integrated grip in the camera body is excellent. You do need somewhat larger hands to fully hold on to this grip, but for me it was absolutely fine. Right, well, when you have a lens like the Samyang 85mm 1.4, for me personally, I want to shoot it as much as possible at its largest aperture of 1.4. So I set the camera body to aperture priority, and on the camera I set the aperture to 1.4. On the lens I also set it to 1.4, and let the camera determine the appropriate shutter speed. During daytime, when it's bright outside, that can be easily done with a 100 ISO film. It is, however, more of a challenge when you use a 3200 ISO film during daytime. It has a top shutter speed of a 2,000th of a second, and sometimes that just is not sufficient to use the largest aperture of 1.4. So sometimes I had to stop down 1 or 2 stops. All in all, I was greatly surprised on using these cameras. They are very cheap to buy. You can find an RT for about 100 to 125 euros. Like I mentioned, RT stands for real time, meaning it has a fixed mirror. When is that appropriate? Well, maybe if you're shooting portraits and you want to make sure that your subject does not blink when you press the shutter, then it could come in handy. And maybe when you're doing sports photography. Let me now show you the results that I was able to achieve. Hans will follow up immediately after you've seen my results, so wait absolutely also for his opinion. He'll probably talk a little bit more about the technique of these cameras, so enjoy also his second half of this video. This is the first one in what we're calling the switch. Many more to come. Thanks for watching. Greatly appreciate it. See you in the next video.
Hello and welcome to the second part of the video that Henk has started. First I wanted to tell you something about the idea I had for a switch, and that is that I chose a combination of cameras and one lens and some different kinds of film, and I will shoot on both cameras a roll of film and then pass the whole set onto Henk so that he could do his magic. What are the cameras that we used? At first, it's a golden oldie. This is the Canon EOS 600, which is actually a first generation autofocus camera of Canon. And the second one, that's a really special one I think, is the Canon EOS RT. And RT stands for real time, and it makes use of a special kind of technique, and that is that it has a translucent mirror. It doesn't flip up, it stays in position, and the nice thing is that you can still see your subject when you press the release button. That gives you a perfect idea of the decisive moment. Both being top range cameras, just under the EOS 1, gave me the impression that actually they had a higher shutter speed, being in the same time frame as, for instance, the Nikon F108, 801 and the F4. They both have an 8,000th of a second. These turned out to have only 2,000th of a second, and that was a problem because I filled the RT, which will have a slightly dimmer viewfinder because of the translucent technology, had a dimmer viewfinder, and also it costs a little light. But with a sunny day and a 1.4 85mm lens, a 1600 is very, very sensitive. So I had some aperture of, let's say, 8, 11 and 16. And those are not especially the apertures you want to use in a lens like this, because it has 1.4, so you should use it at 1.4 to have that separation, all right? The P3200 was in the RT, and the Portra 160 was in the EOS 600. About the lens is a Samyang 85mm 1.4. It's all manual focus. It has even got an aperture ring, and it doesn't have any contacts with the camera. So the camera is absolutely oblivious about what kind of lens is on it. So it doesn't give any aperture in the viewfinder, so you just have to go with the flow. Even if you close the aperture, that is what actually happens. There is no, maybe I can show you that. As soon as you turn the aperture ring, it closes. And that's very unuseful for EOS cameras, because they have an electronic aperture normally. With this came a second problem, and the second problem was that the EOS 600 and the RT don't have an electronic aid to check your focus. You only have the focusing screen to check your focus, and that is a problem because these two cameras are relatively modern cameras. They have also modern focusing screens, and those focusing screens use a Fresnel lens to have an even lit surface on the focusing screen. But with that Fresnel lens, there is this, well, phenomenon that the viewfinder looks outside with an aperture of 2.8, no matter how I adjust my aperturing. So even if I put it on 1.4, what the viewfinder actually shows you is 2.8. And with 2.8, it comes this depth of field of 2.8. So if you try to make minor adjustments in your focus for fine focusing on your subject, you can actually be quite a bit off. And that's what happened. I saw it with Henk's photos, I saw it with my photos. That what happened. These lenses are actually made for using it with an electronic aid or with a more conventional, old-fashioned what's the name? Focusing screen. Those two problems for the highest shutter speed only being 1/2000th of a second, and for the focusing screen, which has a problem with the wide open lens, there were some issues. But I think even with color and black and white, I had some good pictures, and I saw the photos from Henk, and I really think he did some amazing work with it. Although it was not completely in focus, I saw some amazing shots from Henk in Kampen. What are my findings of these cameras? First, I did already shoot the RT once before, and I think it's very funny to have a single lens reflex and not have that blackout moment as soon as you press the button. It's really an eerie feeling almost. It's almost like a rangefinder, with this difference that you can actually see your focus, whether that's all right or not. I keep it in the middle, but that's a nice thing to have. I'm not a Canon shooter. I usually use or Leica or Nikon. But these two cameras, I actually like them very much. They're nice to hold. They have a nice, hefty weight to them. The grip is nice. The overall ergonomics of the cameras are, I think, very good. And the lens, well, the lens was a surprise to me, because I think even with f8 or f11, if you take a picture relatively close by, you still have that separation. And with full open, if you, in our case, hit or miss the focus point, then the background is completely washed out and very soft, and that's the way I like it. So yeah, all in all, I think this was a nice combination, nice to shoot with. I have to be honest, because it's totally on me. Should have thought more about the lens and the focusing screen, because I already knew the phenomenon and I didn't think about it, so that was a bit stupid. With that said, I think that Henk is going to show you a couple of my pictures, and then well, for the usual things, I would say like and subscribe and ring the bell, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.